everyone, my name's Arushi.
My name's Bianca.
My name is Carla.
And I'm Emma.
We are all currently University of Queensland students, and our backgrounds are all from across the health sector. We are here today to pitch you our idea called the Centralised Medical Collaboration, or the CMC.
For the background, I would like to tell you a little story. I'm a Bolivian doctor. Upon relocating to Australia and in the wake of the global pandemic, I thought back to the shortage of medical equipment in Bolivia, one of the most vulnerable countries in Latin America during this pandemic, with an alarmingly high mortality rate. Consequently, along with a group of Bolivian Australian women, we organized a coronavirus appeal aimed to provide frontline healthcare workers with appropriate personal protective equipment. We collected about $4,000 from donations toward this relief campaign in the span of 2 months, and have been able to provide biosecurity coveralls, face shields, face masks, and eyewear protection so far for 7 hospitals in different Bolivian cities. Since transport was an issue given the pandemic, these resources were purchased locally using the donated money. However, we have encountered a new challenge. Now, the hospitals are asking for specific medical supplies, and the barriers to these are: where do we get these resources from, and how do we transport them?
The efforts that Carla has placed into organising this donation is often matched by the generous nature of other Australian residents. Personally, in my old high school, we used to organise a donation drive every year to send basic hygiene items that we deemed necessary to a rehabilitation centre in India annually. Now, eventually, members from our community actually visited the centre in person, and what we found when we arrived was that our donations were not often as effective as we thought they were when we were sending them through. Unfortunately, the influx of supplies that we had provided had actually accumulated over time, and the donations actually caused greater difficulties for the organisation, as it did struggle with storing some of these goods. Since then, we actually developed a communication with them. So every year prior to the annual drive, we would develop a collaborative discussion surrounding what the centre actually required that year and what would be in our capabilities to supply. This was able to increase the effectiveness of the donations that we supplied and ensure that the recipients' specific requirements were actually effectively addressed.
Our first-hand experiences have highlighted for us the issues with medical resource donation. Companies, organizations, and community groups commonly work independently to gather and donate resources to regions in need. However, as in the case of the rehabilitation center in India, a donation recipient's needs can change as time progresses. Without feedback systems in place, there is a potential for wastage of donated items and underutilization of available resources that could be donated and used elsewhere. Like Bolivia, many low-income countries rely on donor aid, with up to 80% of their healthcare equipment funded by international donors. However, an estimated 50% of donated equipment is not in use due to reasons such as lack of spare parts that drives the cost of maintenance high, device incompatibility with local power source, local personnel not trained in use of the machines, and so on. These issues highlight the need for dialogue and collaboration between the donors and the recipients.
In developed countries like Australia, older medical equipment is regularly put out of use through its replacement with more modern equipment. This older equipment is usually still functional. Thus, to reduce wastage of equipment and the carbon footprint from buying new equipment for the purpose of donation, refurbished medical equipment can be relocated to areas in need. There are many organizations that are currently doing this globally. However, they face many roadblocks that affect sustainable donations. Recipient countries have differing needs and differing policies on accepting donations. Transporting equipment is costly, and given that there are multiple donor organizations that donate everything from PPE to ventilators, navigating through who needs what and who can provide what can be very difficult.
This is where the Centralized Medical Collaboration, or the CMC, comes in. With compassion, innovation, and trust, very simply put, CMC acts like a registry of donors that is easy for recipients to navigate through. This creates space for a more tailored delivery of medical equipment. This also decreases overall costs and carbon footprint. How? Well, consider a hypothetical. A hospital in Bolivia needs PPE and ventilators. One donor may not have both of these items or may not have them in enough quantity. Through collaboration with other donors registered with CMC, the needs of the hospital in Bolivia can be met, and the transportation costs for the donated items can be reduced through pooling of resources and shipping the items together. On the other hand, as a donor organization, you may not be aware where your equipment is needed. Thus, CMC creates global visibility on where donations are needed and where they're coming from.
So what does the virtual CMC platform actually look like? We want you to think of it as the eBay or Amazon for donated medical equipment. An organization in a low-income country requests certain equipment via an order form. The registered donors on the platform, those who have that equipment, can individually or via pooled resources fulfill that order. The checklists and resources available online can be used by the donors to ensure their equipment is compatible with local infrastructure and that all necessary parts and manuals are being sent. This platform will be launched initially with Australian donors and possible recipients from certain countries only to make navigation through international restrictions easier in the first phase. More donors and recipients can be added after the initial evaluations. After the launch of the platform, CMC will open up to monetary donations and collaborate with organizations like schools and corporate groups, along with current donors, to fundraise for us. We will also apply for any government funding available.
So the roadmap for the development of the CMC is on the slide that you're currently looking at. What we envision is within the next month, we aim to create and develop the basic virtual platform that will be used for delivery of the CMC. During this initial software development stage, we'll also be reaching out and contacting potential donor organisations within Australia and also recipient organisations in lower income countries. This collaboration during the developmental stage of the platform will allow us to ascertain the initial requirements for platform size, as well as gaining valuable insight into what both donors and recipients require when they are arranging these collaborations. This will allow for resources such as checklists, order forms, shipping options to be developed and then published on the website. We then envision this initial process to take approximately 2 months. After that period, and as we head towards the end of the 3rd month of development, we endeavour to have all the initial resources available to be accessed by both organisations on the donor and recipient lists. We will then finalise the beta version of the CMC and launch it via our social media platforms. After this initial 3-month period, what we will focus on is promoting the CMC across these platforms to increase awareness and gradually expand the registered donors and recipient organisations. This will be a continual process, along with our fundraising efforts to help continue and expand the efforts of the CMC. We will also ensure that evaluation of this process is conducted at 3, 6, and 12-month intervals initially, followed by continual annual evaluation to ensure that the resources on the site remain up to date and relevant for both parties. This will also allow for a prospective expansion to donors from further international regions and recipients from a broader range of countries.
So to help us launch CMC, we asked sponsors to consider funding the initial development of our virtual platform. This will help us further pitch our idea to prospective donors. We would also request to be put in touch with any organisations that would be interested in what we are trying to achieve. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to your support.